Hello, everyone. My name is Christina Liu. I am a mental fitness coach. Thank you so much for joining me on this day 9 of the series talking about building mental fitness. Now, yesterday I talked to you about 3 more accomplice saboteurs, namely the pleaser, the hyperachiever, and the victim. Now, today I want to talk about 3 more accomplice saboteurs, which are the hyper-rational, hyper-vigilant, and the restless. Now, these are very closely corresponded to the types 5, 6, and 7 in the Enneagram test, for those of you who are familiar. Now, just a little bit about the Enneagram test. It's kind of a personality test that puts people in 9 categories. And, when I first got to know about Enneagram, it sounded like, well, you're either this type or this other type, and it sounds like quite deterministic, of who you are. And the reason that I like this saboteur approach is that the saboteurs are talking about actually very similar characteristics as what is talked about in the Enneagram. But this is talking about, well, these are saboteurs that we have, so this is not the real us. So, and with work, like I talked about in previous sessions, when you do the PQ reps, which is focusing your attention on your physical sensation, then you can actually over time decrease the powers of these saboteurs. So, so it's not about this is who you are, this is how you're going to be for the rest of your life, but rather saying, hey, if there are some characteristics or personality types that don't serve you, then actually over time, with a little bit of work and a little bit of knowledge, you can actually make some changes in a pretty significant way. So that's why I find this saboteur approach of these different types of saboteurs to be really empowering, right? So it's not to say you are born just this way and you can never change, but it's actually saying, yes, you can make changes if those characteristics or traits don't serve you. All right, so let's get into these 3 saboteurs. So starting with hyper-rational. So as you can tell by the name, this is someone who is very rational, very logically minded, quite analytical. So, again, when you use it in the appropriate amount, this can be a great strength, some great qualities. However, again, when you take it to an extreme, someone who is hyper-rational would be only focusing on the rational aspects, only focusing on data, for example, or information, and takes all the emotions out of any kind of decision making or even dealing with people. But we all know that humans were not always rational beings. A lot of times the way we behave is based on emotion, or the way we make decisions especially is based on emotion. So someone who is so rational, when you interact with other people, this is when, you can perhaps turn people off, when they feel like, well, you're just looking at everything based on data and not really taking my feelings and emotions into consideration. So this is how it could hurt you in a relationship. And in terms of how it could hurt themselves is, I talked about a lot of these saboteurs generates negative emotions. For this hyper-rational, it's a little bit different. For hyper-rational, sometimes it's almost like a not feeling any emotions whatsoever. But it's not that they don't have emotions. It's just they rather use logic and rationality and data to cover up that emotion, to justify, the decisions that they're making, or why things are happening. So it's almost like they're not allowing themselves to feel certain things. And how this could limit their potential is, in a lot of jobs, in most professions, it's not just all about data, right? Because we're having to deal with people, and people are emotional beings. And so someone who is unable to read other people's emotions and respond to them, this can be quite a limiting factor in someone's career and in many jobs. Of course, there could be some jobs where you don't have to use emotions very much. And perhaps a lot of people with this kind of saboteurs may be more suited to those professions where there's not a whole lot of interactions with people. But, as you can see, but someone who is, with this kind of logical mind, analytical mind, when you can add a little bit of emotion in there, then it could take you much further in this profession, in this work that you do, when you do have to interact with people. Now let's go on to the next type, or next saboteur, which is called the hyper-vigilant. This is correlated with Enneagram type 6. And so this is someone who is very vigilant about everything that's going on so they always are anticipating what bad things could be happening. So they're very much about thinking of all the risks that there exists for doing anything. Right. So on the surface, when you use it to an appropriate amount, again, this is a good quality because, there are dangers in the world, and we do have to think about risks before we take on an action that, potentially could be dangerous for our physical or emotional being. So when you use it to an appropriate amount, it's very helpful. But again, when you take it to an extreme, and that's what all these saboteurs are, this is someone who is just so first of all, it creates a lot of anxiety. So think about it. If you're constantly thinking about the worst case scenario of what could happen, right, then a lot of times it can be very paralyzing for you to take any action, right? So this is someone who thinks about the what ifs a lot. Like for anything that they do, oh, what if this bad thing happens? What if that bad thing happens? So then it limits your potential by you not being able to do a lot of the things that could actually be good for you. But that does involve some risks. But when you prepare for those risks, you can actually go ahead and do them. But these hypervigilant people, or people with hypervigilant saboteurs, they tend to, not take action on things that they deem as too high risk. Or even when they do, they have a lot of anxiety of oh my gosh, scared of what could happen, right? So again, you see how when you take a strength to an extreme, it could negatively benefit you, limit your potential, limit or cause you negative emotions. And also, it has impacts on other people as well. If you're constantly thinking what the bad things could happen, this anxiety rubs off on other people as well. So people don't like to be with people who are constantly anxious and, giving them anxiety. So that's the hyper-vigilant type, or type 6 in the Enneagram. Now, the last type I want to talk about, or the last saboteur for today, is called the restless. Now, what is the restless? So again, as you can see the name, so this is someone who is very excited about a lot of things, who loves to multitask, who is always wondering what else is out there, who can be very fun to be around and constantly has new ideas, constantly wants to seek, what are the possibilities out there. So again, this is, using it to an appropriate amount. This can be great. This is someone who is really fun to be around, who is adventurous, who wants to try new things. Wonderful. But again, when you take it to an extreme, this is someone who constantly is looking for what else is out there. This is someone who is unable to be okay with the present moment, with what is going on now. So if they're talking with someone, a friend, this is just an extreme example, they could be, checking their phone, looking at what else is going on out there, because they're just constantly afraid of what they could be missing out, right? So again, this is an extreme of the saboteur. And so, how does that impact you? How it actually causes the person who with this kind of saboteur a lot of stress, because they're constantly wondering, oh, could there be something better out there? Or when they're doing something, oh, could I be doing something else? You see how it can induce quite a bit of anxiety. And also with other people, like people like to be, when you're being with them, they want you to be present, want you to focus your attention on them, but people with a strong restless saboteur, they're unable to do this. So, they could drive away some relationships or cause negative emotions in people close to them when they don't manage this saboteur. And how it could limit their potential is, we all know, and there's a lot of research that has been said that multitasking is actually an illusion. We can't really multitask very well. So it actually could limit your productivity, So if you're constantly trying to do multiple things at the same time, whereas if you're able to actually do some focus, you could do it faster, and you could be more effective. So that was the 3 saboteurs for today: the hyper-rational, the hyper-vigilant, and the restless. Now, I would love to hear any comments or feedback that you have or questions. And then again, I'm going to link the saboteur assessment in the comment box below. And it really takes just 5 minutes, and it's completely free. And you can find out what are your top accomplice saboteurs. And I would love to hear your comments about what you find out. Again, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Christina Liu, and I hope to see you tomorrow, where I will finish off the last 2 accomplice saboteurs. Thanks again. Bye now.